The fuel needle trembled against empty. Colonel Hans-Georg Hildebrandt gripped his field glasses tighter as his command vehicle reached the ridge above the abandoned depot. Below him stretched something impossible. The morning desert sun couldn't be creating this mirage. Row after perfect row of fuel drums gleamed in the Tunisian dawn. February 20th, 1943. Casserine Pass had fallen. What lay before the 21st Panzer Division commander defied belief. American supply dumps abandoned in perfect order, methodically stacked, glinting like gold across the desert floor. This cannot be real. Hildebrandt lowered his glasses, raised them again. Still there. More fuel than his entire division typically received in 2 months. The retreating U.S. Second Corps had left everything behind. Everything. His division had been running on fumes, every drop carefully rationed, every liter measured twice. Now this windfall appeared like answered prayers. The depot contained 57,000 gallons of gasoline, more petroleum than most German divisions had seen since El Alamein. Major Friedrich von Mellenthin would record this moment decades later. The intelligence officer of the Africa Corps wrote of finding more petrol in one American dump than entire German divisions had received in months. The Americans fled and abandoned enough fuel to operate our entire army for days. What kind of enemy possessed such abundance? What military force could afford to abandon supplies worth more than Germany could deliver across the Mediterranean? This single moment at Casserine revealed a devastating truth: the mathematical impossibility of German victory. Desert warfare equations weren't written in tactics or courage anymore. They were calculated in fuel consumption versus fuel delivery. Those numbers told stories that German battlefield excellence couldn't overcome. The Africa Corps had mastered 2 years of desert campaigns. Under Rommel's leadership, they had driven British forces back to Egypt. They had earned Montgomery's respect. They had turned North Africa into a showcase of German tactical superiority. Yet every victory now came with desperate calculations: fuel required versus fuel available. The mathematics were unforgiving. Wehrmacht logistics records from late 1942 revealed the crisis in brutal detail. German and Italian forces in North Africa needed 32,250 tons of supplies monthly. Their 65,000 men consumed resources faster than convoys could deliver. Fuel alone accounted for 7,500 tons, 54% of all requirements. Mediterranean convoys faced devastating interdiction. Malta-based aircraft sank 60 to 70% of Axis supply ships by early 1943. What reached African ports then faced 1,500-kilometer journeys to the front lines. Transport consumed more fuel than it delivered. The desert's appetite for petroleum exceeded all European calculations. A single panzer division required 350 tons of supplies daily during combat. Moving 1 ton of supplies forward consumed 5 tons of fuel in transport. Tank crews had become experts at conservation techniques that would have seemed absurd in Poland or France. Coasting down slopes with engines silent, push-starting vehicles to save batteries, siphoning fuel from damaged tanks with religious dedication. Rommel himself admitted the truth in January 1943. Our operations are decided more by the petrol gauge than tactical requirements. This wasn't hyperbole, mathematical reality. The Africa Corps had only 3 days of fuel remaining at El Alamein when Montgomery attacked. By February, the situation had worsened despite being closer to supply ports. February 14, 1943, brought dawn and desperate action. Field Marshal Rommel and General Hans-Jürgen von Arnim launched their coordinated offensive against American positions in central Tunisia. Operation Frühlingswind. Spring wind would send 2 panzer divisions through mountain passes toward key objectives. General Friedrich von Broick's 10th Panzer Division rolled forward. Colonel Hildebrandt's 21st Panzer followed through the Fide Pass toward Sidi Bouzid. This represented the Afrika Korps' last concentrated armored assault, a final attempt to disrupt Allied preparations before material superiority became overwhelming. Complete tactical surprise followed. More than 100 German tanks and assault guns smashed into isolated American positions. The U.S. 1st Armored Division's Combat Command A couldn't provide mutual support across scattered hilltop positions. Their M3 Grant and Lee tanks proved catastrophically vulnerable. High silhouettes and hull-mounted main guns made them easy targets for German combined arms tactics perfected over 3 years of warfare. Lieutenant Colonel John Waters commanded the 1st Battalion, 1st Armored Regiment. His unit lost 44 of 51 tanks in the opening engagement at Sidi Bouzid. The destruction followed systematic patterns. German veterans executed textbook maneuvers, while American crews charged piecemeal into concentrated fire. Many Americans were experiencing combat for the first time. Their courage couldn't overcome tactical inexperience against battle-hardened opponents. Yet, even in victory, fuel dominated German thinking. Panzer IV companies abandoned operational vehicles because their tanks ran dry. The irony cut deep, destroying enemy forces they couldn't pursue, winning battles they couldn't exploit. All because fuel gauges read empty. Victory felt hollow when exploitation was impossible. February 17, 1943, saw American forces retreating toward Casserine Pass. Behind them, they abandoned supply depots that seemed fantastical to German quartermasters. U.S. Army doctrine called for redundant supply systems, one depot every 50 to 100 miles. Each containing supplies sufficient to maintain operations even if others were lost. German forces measured fuel by the liter. They counted every artillery round. Now they encountered abundance beyond comprehension. A reconnaissance patrol from the 21st Panzer Division discovered the first major depot near a destroyed railway station. The patrol leader's report survived in Wehrmacht archives. His words revealed German shock at American abundance. The depot covered approximately 10 hectares. Fuel drums stacked in perfect rows. Over 400 drums of 55 gallons each. Rations for what appeared to be an entire regiment for a month. White bread still fresh from delivery. Canned meat in quantities they hadn't seen since 1941. Real coffee, not the ersatz substitutes they'd grown accustomed to. Chocolate by the carton. Cigarettes by the thousand. Medical supplies, including items that had vanished from German field hospitals years earlier. German troops, who had subsisted on Italian hardtack and acorn coffee, fell upon American rations with desperate hunger. The chocolate alone exceeded what German civilians received in monthly allocations. But fuel mattered most. Within hours, vehicles designated non-operational due to empty tanks were suddenly mobile again. February 19th to 20th, 1943, brought the main assault through Casserine Pass. German forces pushed through the 2-mile-wide gap and overran the primary American supply infrastructure supporting Second Corps operations. What they discovered exceeded their wildest expectations and confirmed their darkest fears. The battle's material results were staggering beyond belief. German forces captured 183 tanks, 104 half-tracks, 208 artillery pieces, 512 trucks and motor vehicles, along with 215 cubic meters of gasoline and lubricants. That translated to 57,000 gallons of petroleum products, plus 45 tons of ammunition. Perspective made these numbers even more shocking. The fuel alone represented nearly a week's supply for the entire Afrika Korps. More than many German divisions had received in the previous quarter. Resources that could transform operational possibilities overnight. Rommel himself inspected the captured depots on February 21st. His aide-de-camp, Hauptmann Heinz Werner Schmidt, recorded the field marshal's reaction. Rommel stood silent, surveying mountains of supplies, then spoke quietly with devastating clarity. Each American battalion is supplied better than our entire divisions. What kind of victory is it when the enemy can afford to lose more than we can afford to use? The captured American vehicles proved even more valuable than fuel in the short term. Wehrmacht records indicate that by February 1943, 85% of Rommel's transport consisted of captured British and American vehicles. The American 2.5-ton trucks were particularly prized. German troops called them Jimmies, more reliable than German Opel Blitz trucks, easier to maintain. Abandoned with spare parts German forces hadn't seen in years, the captured supplies revealed more than material wealth. They exposed fundamentally different approaches to warfare. American military doctrine assumed massive oversupply as insurance against uncertainty. Where German divisions operated on 200 tons of supplies, daily American divisions were allocated 700 tons. This difference reflected more than wealth. It revealed an entirely different conception of war itself. Interrogation of captured Americans provided further shock. Captain William Baker of the 1st Armored Division claimed his battalion normally received 100% of requested supplies, plus a 25% reserve margin. When German intelligence officers suggested this was propaganda, Baker laughed. He insisted that level was considered minimum acceptable. Captured requisition forms confirmed allocations that exceeded entire German monthly deliveries. The documentation proved American abundance wasn't exaggeration. General Friedrich von Broich commanded the 10th Panzer Division during the offensive. His after-action report captured German bewilderment. The enemy operates on principles foreign to our experience. They assume waste, plan for excess, consider redundancy essential. This is not an army in the European sense. It is an industrial process that happens to involve combat. The German success at Casserine created a paradox that even junior officers recognized immediately. Captured supplies temporarily resolved immediate shortages. They enabled operations otherwise impossible. Yet the sheer abundance revealed mathematical impossibility of ultimate victory. No amount of tactical excellence could overcome such industrial disparity. The psychological impact on German troops was profound and demoralizing. They discovered medical supplies including penicillin, a miracle drug unavailable even in German military hospitals. They found chocolate and coffee as standard rations, while their families in Germany subsisted on turnips and ersatz substitutes. Most demoralizing were captured documents showing these materials would be replaced within weeks. Shipping manifests indicated this was merely one of dozens of similar depots. Temporary abundance surrounded by evidence of permanent disadvantage. A junior officer of the 10th Panzer Division wrote home in a letter that survived in family archives. His words captured the bitter irony perfectly. We feast on American rations while our families starve. We burn American fuel while our homeland suffers shortages. We have won a battle by capturing what our enemies throw away. This is not victory. It is scavenging. The realization cut deeper than any battlefield defeat. Field Marshal Rommel underwent complete transformation in his assessment of American forces after Casserine. Initially dismissive of their training and tactical doctrine, he recognized after seeing their material resources that tactical skill mattered less than industrial capacity. His February 22nd report to OKW revealed this new understanding. The Americans are militarily inexperienced, but materially overwhelming. They learn from mistakes we cannot afford to make. Time favors them absolutely. Each day they grow stronger, while we grow weaker, regardless of tactical outcomes. His final assessment proved prophetic. We can win battles, but not the war. The Americans bring to the battlefield not superior tactics, but superior arithmetic. They win through multiplication of supplies, equipment attempts. We are fighting the entire industrial output of America. Mathematical certainty, disguised as military operations. Following Casserine, the Africa Corps operated increasingly on captured supplies. This dependency created an operational death spiral. Every advance required capturing enemy materials. Tactical planning transformed into desperate scavenging expeditions. By March 1943, Wehrmacht records showed bizarre equipment mixtures. German crews operating captured Sherman tanks marked with Wehrmacht crosses. Artillery units firing American 105mm howitzers. Transport companies running entirely on captured vehicles. The proud Africa Corps had transformed into what one veteran later called a parasitic army, living off enemy excess, dependent on opponent generosity. The irony was bitter and inescapable. Dependency reached absurd levels throughout the shrinking German perimeter. German workshops used American tools and spare parts. Medical units relied entirely on captured American supplies. Even staff vehicles ran on American fuel as German allocations prioritized combat vehicles that increasingly didn't exist. The captured documents at Casserine provided German intelligence with their first accurate assessment of American production capabilities. What they discovered defied comprehension and shattered remaining illusions about eventual victory. A single captured report from the Detroit tank arsenal showed production of 1,350 M4 Sherman tanks in January 1943 alone. This exceeded total German tank production for the entire quarter. American monthly output surpassed German quarterly capabilities. More devastating were production trajectories revealed in planning documents. American output was increasing monthly while German production declined due to bombing and resource shortages. The mathematics were simple and merciless. America produced 4,000 aircraft monthly. Germany managed 2,000. America manufactured 4,000 tanks monthly. Germany produced 500. America built 50,000 vehicles monthly. Germany constructed $5,000. Major Hermann Kohl was an industrial engineer serving with the Africa Corps. His analysis of captured documents concluded with suppressed findings. We are not fighting an army. We are fighting an entire continent's industrial output. The outcome is determined by production statistics, not battlefield courage. Victory was mathematically impossible regardless of tactical skill. Beyond material mathematics lay human equations equally impossible to overcome. The Africa Corps was losing irreplaceable veterans while Americans arrived with fresh training and unlimited equipment. Each destroyed German tank meant a crew lost that took years to train. Each American loss was replaced within weeks through systematic rotation policies. An intercepted American communication revealed they were shipping replacement crews at a rate of 5,000 monthly to North Africa. The Africa Corps hadn't received 5,000 replacements total since El Alamein. The mathematics of attrition were as merciless as those of supply. Time worked against German forces with mechanical precision. Every day brought American reinforcements, while German strength diminished through irreplaceable losses. The variety of captured equipment created maintenance nightmares that accelerated German defeat. American vehicles required parts German workshops couldn't manufacture. Captured tanks needed specialized tools German crews didn't possess. The abundance of captured equipment became a burden as mechanical attrition destroyed what combat hadn't touched. By April 1943, abandoned American vehicles littered German positions. not destroyed in battle, but immobilized by lack of maintenance. The Africa Corps had captured more than it could sustain, a perfect metaphor for their entire North African campaign. Tactical success that revealed strategic impossibility. General von Arnim assumed command in Tunisia after Rommel's departure due to illness. He inherited an impossible situation that no amount of skill could resolve. His forces operated primarily on captured materials they couldn't replace, dependent on supply lines that delivered almost nothing while consuming precious fuel in transport. His chief of staff's assessment was brutally honest. We are fighting with borrowed time and stolen supplies against an enemy with unlimited both. Mathematics, not tactics, determines the outcome. We can win every battle and still lose through arithmetic alone. The truth was inescapable and final. As German forces retreated into an ever-shrinking perimeter around Tunis and Bizerte, the dependency on captured supplies became complete. Units operated entirely on seized American materials, creating the surreal situation of the Wehrmacht fighting with American equipment against American forces. The final German staff estimate from April 1943 revealed impossible mathematics. They needed 7,500 tons of supplies monthly for defensive operations. They were receiving less than 1,000 tons through increasingly disrupted supply lines. American forces were receiving 15,000 tons daily through secure logistics networks. The ratio of supply superiority exceeded 45-1. No amount of tactical skill could overcome such disparity. May 13, 1943, brought inevitable surrender. The Africa Corps capitulated along with all remaining Axis forces in North Africa. Over 275,000 German and Italian troops became prisoners. They surrendered not to superior generals or braver soldiers, but to inexorable mathematics of industrial warfare. Decades later, surviving Africa Corps veterans gathered for reunions where they reflected on Casserine's true meaning. Their testimonies, recorded by historians, provide final assessment of what captured supplies actually represented. Friedrich Schultz commanded a panzer company during the battle. Speaking in 1985, he offered this perspective. We thought we won at Casserine because we captured the pass and the supplies. We actually lost because those supplies showed us the war was already over. When your greatest victory involves seizing what your enemy abandons, you are not winning. You are delaying defeat. The realization came too late, but with perfect clarity. Wilhelm Hoffmann served as supply officer with the 21st Panzer Division. His 1990 reflection captured the bitter irony. The American fuel we captured meant everything tactically and nothing strategically. It enabled us to continue operations for a few more weeks. But it also showed that our enemies measured fuel in shiploads, while we measured it in drums. We were fighting against infinity with finite resources. The mathematics were impossibly stacked against us. The significance of Casserine Pass lay not in tactical maneuvers historians debate, but in simple mathematics revealed by captured supplies. German monthly fuel allocation totaled 12,000 gallons when successfully delivered. American fuel captured at Casserine totaled 57,000 gallons. American monthly fuel shipments to North Africa totaled 15 million gallons. Time for America to replace Casserine losses was 2 weeks. Time for Germany to accumulate equivalent supplies was 6 months if deliveries remained uninterrupted. These numbers told the entire story of World War II. Not in battles won or lost, but in industrial capacity to wage modern war. The Africa Corps achieved its greatest tactical victory at the precise moment it discovered strategic defeat was inevitable. For Americans, Casserine Pass was a painful lesson in combat readiness that led to rapid improvement. They replaced ineffective commanders with proven leaders like George Patton. They improved tactics through hard-earned experience. They better coordinated their overwhelming material advantages. Within weeks, they had transformed defeat into educational opportunity. American learning curves were steep but sustainable because resources allowed for mistakes and corrections. For Germans, Casserine was revelation of impossibility. They had won tactically while discovering they had already lost strategically. The supplies they captured provided temporary relief, while proving ultimate defeat was mathematical certainty. Those 57,000 gallons of fuel, those 183 tanks, those mountains of food and ammunition, all provided momentary operational capability, while demonstrating that victory was arithmetically impossible. Major Friedrich von Mellenthin served as intelligence officer throughout the North African campaign. His post-war memoir, Panzer Battles, captured the essential truth. At Casserine, we learned that the Americans could afford to lose a battle. We could not afford to win one. They replaced their losses in weeks. We couldn't replace our victories. This was not war as we understood it. It was industrial mathematics in uniform. The deeper truth revealed at Casserine was that World War II had become a contest of industrial capacity rather than military skill. The Wehrmacht, shaped by European campaigns where operational art could overcome material disadvantage discovered in North Africa, that industrial output determined outcomes more than tactical brilliance. Captured American supplies indicated a production system operating on principles German planners hadn't imagined. Where Germany sought efficiency, America pursued redundancy. Where Germany conserved America, assumed waste. Where Germany calculated minimum requirements, America multiplied everything by factors that seemed insane to scarcity-minded Germans. An American logistics manual captured at Casserine specified ammunition expenditures that exceeded entire German campaign allocations. Artillery units were authorized to fire suppressive barrages using more shells than German units received for targeted engagements. The profligacy seemed criminal to German officers who hoarded every round. The impact on German morale proved more damaging than material losses. Soldiers who had believed in German technical superiority discovered American equipment that was not just abundant, but often superior. The Sherman tank, initially mocked by German crews, proved more reliable than German Panthers. American radios worked better than German communications equipment. American rations surpassed anything German soldiers had eaten since before the war. Letters home that survived censorship and bombing revealed the depth of demoralization. Soldiers wrote of American chocolate bars that exceeded German children's Christmas presents. They described medical supplies that could have saved German wounded who died for want of basic medicines. They mentioned fuel wastage that exceeded German allocations for entire operations. The contrast was too stark to ignore or explain away. The propaganda ministry eventually stopped trying to explain North African operations positively. Goebbels himself noted that soldiers who had seen American abundance couldn't be convinced Germany was winning through propaganda alone. Reality had intruded on carefully constructed narratives of inevitable German victory. As the final perimeter shrank around Tunis in early May 1943, German forces made a last accounting of their situation. They were operating almost entirely on captured equipment. Burning captured fuel. Firing captured ammunition. The Afrika Korps that had entered Africa as the Wehrmacht's elite had become completely dependent on enemy largesse. Pride had given way to parasitic survival. The surrender on May 13, 1943, was almost anticlimactic. German forces had run out of fuel, ammunition, food, and hope. They surrendered to an enemy who could afford to be generous in victory because victory had been assured by industrial production long before the last shot was fired. General Hans Kramer, last commander of the Afrika Korps, stated the situation simply. We were defeated by superior material. But this understated the reality. They were defeated by a system that could afford to lose what Germany couldn't afford to win. That could waste what Germany couldn't acquire. That could replace in days what Germany couldn't produce in months. Industrial arithmetic had determined military outcomes. The Battle of Casserine Pass entered American military history as a defeat that taught valuable lessons about combat readiness and tactical coordination. Within weeks, the U.S. Army had reformed, bringing in new commanders and implementing hard-learned lessons about concentration of force and combined arms operations. But for the Germans who won the battle, Casserine represented something far more profound. The moment when tactical victory revealed strategic impossibility, when material abundance demonstrated mathematical certainty of defeat. The supplies they captured provided temporary operational capability, while proving that long-term victory was arithmetically impossible. Mathematics disguised as military operations had rendered courage and skill irrelevant. Veterans who survived captivity and returned to Germany after the war would often reflect on Casserine as the moment they understood Germany would lose. Not because of the tactical situation, which remained favorable, but because of the industrial arithmetic revealed by those captured supplies. In 2003, on the 60th anniversary of Casserine Pass, the last surviving German officer from the battle provided this final assessment. We captured enough fuel to operate for days, enough food to feast for weeks, enough ammunition to fight battles. But we also captured understanding. The Americans could lose such quantities without concern. We couldn't acquire such quantities with our greatest efforts. We were fighting against mathematical certainty, disguised as military operations. Those 57,000 gallons of fuel we seized were simultaneously our salvation and our doom. Salvation because they enabled continued resistance. Doom because they proved resistance was futile. We had glimpsed American industrial power and knew that no amount of German courage could defeat American arithmetic. Casserine taught the Americans how to fight. It taught us that we had already lost. Both lessons were true, but ours was final. The mathematics were merciless and absolute. The Africa Corps' capture of American supply dumps at Casserine Pass in February 1943 represented the last significant German tactical victory in North Africa. The 57,000 gallons of fuel, 183 tanks, 512 vehicles, and tons of supplies they seized enabled temporary continuation of operations that would have been otherwise impossible. Yet within this tactical triumph lay strategic catastrophe. The captured supplies revealed an industrial disparity so vast that no amount of operational skill could overcome it. German forces had discovered they were fighting not the United States Army, but the United States itself, its factories, its farms, its infinite capacity for production and replacement. The mathematics were merciless and final. While German forces celebrated capturing 57,000 gallons of fuel, American forces were shipping millions of gallons monthly to North Africa. While Germans carefully maintained captured Sherman tanks, America was producing 1,350 monthly. While German soldiers treasured captured American rations, American production could feed armies and still destroy surplus to maintain prices. Industrial capacity had made military outcomes predictable. At Casserine Pass, the Africa Corps won a battle that proved the war was lost. They captured supplies that demonstrated they couldn't supply themselves. They achieved tactical victory that revealed strategic defeat was inevitable. They discovered that in modern industrial warfare, countries that could afford to abandon 57,000 gallons of fuel would inevitably defeat countries that couldn't afford to acquire it. The legacy of Casserine Pass is thus profoundly different for victor and vanquished. For Americans, it was a harsh lesson that led to rapid improvement and eventual triumph. For Germans, it was revelation that courage and skill meant nothing against industrial mathematics, that tactical excellence couldn't overcome strategic impossibility, that they were fighting not armies but arithmetic, and arithmetic always wins with mathematical precision. In the end, those 57,000 gallons of captured American fuel told the entire story of World War II. Not in battles won or lost, but in industrial capacity to wage modern war. The Africa Corps had captured proof of their own defeat, seized evidence of impossibility, won a victory that proved victory was impossible. They had discovered in abandoned American supply dumps in the Tunisian desert the mathematical certainty of the Third Reich's destruction.